Thank you. Lydia, thank you so much for those remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to PPI, welcome to the Women in Leadership, and welcome to the French American Chamber of Commerce. I want to share right in the beginning, we want you to join us. I'm going to start off with that. I'll start off and I'll end with that. We want you to be members of the French American Chamber of Commerce. And echoing what Lydia has said, this is a critical and crucial time for us to be together in small units and groups, but this is the time for us to be together. So thank you. Thank you very much. Where does the notion of mentorship comes from? It actually begins in the 17th century in Greek mythology, from Odysseus. Excuse any pronunciations I have. He was going to war, right? If everybody remembers the Odyssey, off to war, and he had a son, Telemachus. What would happen to him? Who would care for him? So in this society, men and children, specifically boy children, had to model after their fathers. Who would teach him? Who would discipline him? Who would counsel him? I said discipline because boys need discipline. I have a 14-year-old. But we all need discipline. I think that's clear. Okay. Who would guide him? Enter in mentor. And so here we are, mentoring. What does mentoring mean for us now? What does it mean for a seasoned professional like Madam Diane Bell-McKoy? I know she wants to dialogue very much with us in the audience, and I think this under Lydia's guidance, we really want to engage the women and men in this group, in this conversation. So while I have prepared questions, Diane is more senior than I. So she might take us, I don't know where. We're gonna follow her, and I'll try to guide as much as I can. Madam Diane, welcome.
Thank you.
I am very pleased to have you, as Lydia said, launch this program for us.
I am very pleased to be here. I just do want to add one point, though, in terms of Lydia's wonderful presentation of my background. I want you to know that I was a child prodigy because I'm not that old. Okay. So.
Okay. All right. We are the same everywhere, I think, women. Okay. Well, that's a part of who we are. Our style, our grace, who we are, and who we model ourselves after. And that's represented in this room. So thank you for that reminder. Diane, how is a mentor defined? And I understand that this definition has translated through time and space. And even as Lydia said, right now, what a mentor might be is different, perhaps. Could you open us with that, please?
I will give you my definition. We've talked about this. For me, a mentor, in the relationship between mentor and mentee, is really about an intentional, respectful, and trust-based relationship. Focus on one's career advancement or personal growth. And it's a relationship between two people. For me, that's the definition of mentor.
One of the things I struck by is that for you to have this mentor relationship, you have to trust that person. Mm-hmm. How does one develop trust? Some of us are outgoing like myself, some of us are not. How do you develop trust, and what are the tenets of those? I would imagine it's developing a relationship. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I can come back. Mm-hmm. What are the tenets of developing trust? How do you develop trust in a mentor-mentee relationship?
Well, I want to go back to something you just said, though, because I think oftentimes what we don't acknowledge is that a mentor-mentee relationship is really about relationship. I mean, that's really the key word here. And it's about relationships that we all have in our life in terms of various types of relationships. And that you cannot have, I would think, a relationship that can be beneficial to both people in a positive way unless you build trust. And trust is not given. Trust is something that has to be built in terms of between two people or several people. But I think that trust also has to be built in a very intentional way. And I think about that over the years that I have been a mentor or been in the role of a mentee, as well as even a manager, or all the different roles I've played in my career. And I've always been very explicit about building trust. And that means being consistent, first of all, acknowledging that trust is a thing. And then I think you have to say it out loud. You can't make any assumptions. And I would go back, although you haven't asked me this, that I think that's critical about a mentor and mentee relationship. Don't make assumptions. But you really do have to lay it out very concretely that maybe we know each other, maybe we don't. But over time, we really want to build trust, and that means that I have to believe what you say to me is true. I have to believe that you're going to respect me. I have to believe that we have a similar values. I have to believe also that you're going to maintain my confidentiality. And so I'm going to test that. That is what we do for all of those that are in a intimate relationship with male, female, whatever. You built it over time. There were things that you wanted to know about the person that helped you know whether you were comfortable or not. There were things you wanted to question in terms of, that you shared something, it didn't go anywhere else. And over time, you begin to understand that person I trust, and they trust me. And so it is really a very intentional effort that must be made to build that relationship and to build trust. Without trust, for me, at least in my experience, my career, you really cannot have a successful mentor-mentee relationship without trust.
Thank you, Diane. Diane, there are two types of mentorships that kind of come into my mind, transactional and transformative. Mm-hmm. And as I think about that in terms of laying out the trust, is there feedback? Yeah. Somebody's telephone. Oh, by the way, please mute or vibrate. I should have said that. Yeah, transformational and transactional. Is it transformational and transaction, right? There's those two types. I'm sure there's others, right? But can you talk a little bit about that? And I'm still wanting the how do I, right? And sorry, you mentioned being clear about what are you in this for? Mm-hmm. Why are we in this mentor relationship? What are we trying to get? Is it to move from job 1 to job 2? Is it to literally change certain aspects of Bahia? Some things that I'm doing that I need to change aspects, not negative, right? But to advance. We're in a time of change. This is an opportunity. We were having a conversation outside. We're talking about this is the time to make some moves.
So before I answer that question in terms of keeping the seriousness of the moment, I have to share, as everyone was looking around in terms of where the vibration was coming from. I dare not tell Bahia it was mine.
You see? You see?
And so,
carry on.
For me, it really is important to be clear whether or not you're seeking, and oftentimes I think a mentor-mentor relationship is both transactional and transformative, but it really is has to be defined by the mentee. I can't define that as your mentor. That an entering a relationship with someone is asking me to serve as a mentor around their career advancement, maybe it's around a particular set of skills, maybe it's around particularly one of the gifts that I have is a relationship building. I can build a relationship anywhere. And it's something that someone will come and say, will you help me learn how to do this? Someone may come and say, I'm really struggling with how to network. I don't just want to know how to build a relationship. I really am uncomfortable being out in public, and I'm uncomfortable with going to events around my career. Or I want to know, how do I further my career in this particular sector? And so sometimes it's around a set of skills that are very transactional in terms of that, and it's simple. Someone may say, no, I really am having a hard time believing in myself. Much more focused on a transformational effort. I don't really believe in me. A number of people may share that I do great work, but I don't see that. And that we often do not see ourselves as others see us. And one of the great benefits of, I think, a mentor is being able to provide that vision of you as a mentee that you don't see, and helping you see it, and then helping you actualize it. For me, that's much more the transformational versus the kind of hard skills that I can pass on and you can learn in terms of transactional.
Thank you. When you think about mentor-mentee relationship, if we were to do a composite of a mentor, based on your experience, you've designed these programs, some have worked, some have not worked. Some of your relationships may have been formalized in institutions and informal. What does a good mentor look like?
Well, it has to start off with first of all, both from a program perspective, but from the individual, they want to do it. The programs that I've seen that don't work as well are in organizations, corporations, where it's designed and it becomes forced. That doesn't work. Programs where the mentee doesn't have a chance. Actually, I helped Hopkins design one of their programs once, and we had a fight about this because they wanted to design it and then make the matches. And I said, you can't do that. You really do have to let the mentee pick and select in terms of who they believe they can work with as a mentor. So it doesn't work if it's forced. That's first of all. I will tell you that doesn't work. And so when it works, it's really, first of all, a mentor has to want to do it. They have to have the temperament for it. Not everybody gets along that way. Not everybody is willing to share. I'll go to what I believe to be the qualities of a good mentor to answer that. One, I think you have to want to do it. You have to have a sense and a willingness to engage with people and like doing that. You have to be an active, engaged listener. You cannot be a mentor unless you're willing to spend the time and have the time. Because somebody can feel if you're rushed with them, if you're not giving them that time. You have to be someone who is able to respect confidentiality. The office gossiper would not be the mentor, okay? But so you have to be clear about that. But as a mentor, my belief, I think you also have to take stock of who you are. I think it's very important. We don't all know ourselves in the different phases of our life. We don't all know ourselves deeply, but you have to know who you are in that moment that you take that on, and what may be some of your limitations, because you cannot be a mentor to someone and helping them grow if you also don't acknowledge, I'm human, I've got limitations too.
Thank you. So we know what a mentor, we've defined a mentor. We know what one looks like. We've talked about the characteristics. Talk to me, or rather us, about the mentee. And let me go 1.5 back, which is a mentor relationship mutually beneficial?
Oh, absolutely, I believe it is. I say to anybody that I'm a mentor for that I'm going to get a lot out of this too. I'm clear, this is not and if you're expecting a one-way street, I'm not your mentor. I'm just not the person for you. Because I know that I learn from any engagement I have with anybody. I'm going to learn something. I don't know everything. As I said, I'm mindful of my own limitations. And so there are things that a mentee can give me in that relationship. But I think a mentee, one, also has to be ready. You have to have taken stock. Are you ready to be vulnerable? I don't think mentees often take the time to acknowledge that it will mean they will have to be vulnerable. They'll have to share some things about themselves that they may not be comfortable with. Are they ready really to grow? Because that's what you're asking for, somebody to help you grow in terms of that pathway, whether it's career, whether personal growth. So I think those are things that are first two things that are important if you say that you're ready for somebody to be your mentor and you as a mentee. You as a mentee also have to be mindful of time. Do you have the time to give? Do you have the time that they're willing to give you? Can you make the time? Is your plate too full to participate at this time? Maybe you have to come back to it later. So again, I go back to the beginning of this about relationships. You have to know, are you ready? Does my life fit this to have a relationship that I say I want at this time or not? Maybe I have to put a hold on it and come back later.
Is this conversation resonating with people? Does it make sense? Please. You have a question?
I have a comment and a question, and that is, isn't it important for mentors to hold the mentee accountable for the plan that they set up? So if they're looking for a new job, you can say, the next time we meet, I want you to come back with 5 organizations that you want to explore and 5 individuals with whom you may want to send your feelers out to. Is that, in your view, an important aspect of holding the mentee accountable step by step?
I have to think about that. And I've got to put my hat on in terms of 2 different ways. I actually coach right now for a number of leaders. So I'm my coaching hat versus my mentor hat. So yes, but for me, when I'm a mentor, I'm also asking you to hold yourself accountable. That's the difference for me versus as a coach. Because as a mentor, you've determined what you're looking for in terms of from this relationship, in terms of career advancement, in terms of our personal growth. So I'm gonna expect you to come back and be ready to have that conversation. Whereas when I coach, it is a much more specific plan in terms of, and they've got to identify that plan. They've actually got to write it out. I won't coach without that. But as a mentor, I also go at mentor a little bit more, maybe on a slower pace, because both relationships require trust and require time to build that trust. But I'm also likely with a mentor and mentee to spend much more personal time in terms of getting to know and I'm expecting them to be able to come back with where they are. Because I'll tell you, and Bahia knows this, in a mentor-mentee relationship, I've had someone before who really didn't take it serious. And so they didn't come back with it. I said, it's your life. I said, I'm not sure how much longer I can be your mentor. For me, that's the distinction. You have to want that and be a part of being accountable. Yeah.
Thank you. What I wanted to do quickly is take a read of the room by hands, okay? Who has been a mentor? Very quick, just for us to see who's in the room. Okay, thank you. And who has been a mentee? About half. Yeah. So it seems like we have played perhaps both roles. And so some of this conversation may have you reflect on that experience that you had, see the benefits and the challenges of said experiences. There are times when a mentee-mentor relationship does not work, right? What are are there safeguards that should be in a program, a formal program, or even an informal program or relationship that talks about, this is where I get off. If X and Y doesn't happen, then we go left, we go right. Sort of partnership agreements.
You know, I think that's important, but at the time both either the mentor or the mentee believes is not working, I think you also have a responsibility to that relationship to check in. Is it communication? Have I not understood you? Do you not understand me? Is there something that we're just off kilter about right now? It's not that it doesn't work. We just went off track for a moment in terms of not being clear to understand. But yes, I think from the beginning, to the point made earlier, that you really do want to have a clear sense of what are we in this for. As a mentee, what do you want? As a mentor, what can I give you? And that has to be clarity. I don't think it is successful unless there's clarity from that. So that if you get off track, or personality, it just doesn't click. I think you have a responsibility to be respectful in ending it. Acknowledge what didn't work. But I always try, if it doesn't work, to make sure encouraging the mentee where I think there may be somebody else that may be better for them than me, in terms of what this person I know of, I think can answer more of what you're looking for right now. For me, that's part of my responsibility. My responsibility as a professional Black woman, that I'm going to make sure that I say that or try to make that opportunity for the person.
It seems to me that the role of mentor is very important, but one that might require, as you said, some deep reflection and preparation. So you might want to be a mentor, you might desire, or you might have those requisite skills to be able to provide those services or that relationship. What can one do if you're in the design phase of a program? What are the components of training a mentor? Can mentors be trained to play this role? And if so, maybe 1 or 2 points of how does one train a mentor? What are the components perhaps of training a mentor to play this really important role? Because as I hear you, Diane, it's even more serious than I perhaps reflected upon. The weight and responsibility of a mentor is heavy, and one has to be prepared. Big enough to identify your weaknesses and strength, big enough to say, I can't play this role anymore. This is not a good fit, or I need to come back. So what are the training points that one might have?
I have to think about that, Bahia. I think the first things I think about training, well, the first thing I think about in terms of designing any kind of program, I absolutely believe the potential participants of that program must be asked what they want. I don't believe you design anything without asking the participants or who may be your potential audience, asking what they're looking for. With that information, I'm armed with that, then it gives me a better sense of what I'm looking for in terms of, because the other part about what I didn't say earlier that I'm mindful of because of where I'm sitting is there's also cultural differences in terms of that. And you've got to be mindful of that. You can't dismiss that because that also can lead to miscommunication, back to that very issue of miscommunication. Where I come from, what I live may have very different, and you may live on the other side of town and have a very different experience. And so I would say part of that is spending the time with someone who wants to be a mentor in terms of being clear about why they're in this program. So I don't know if it's training as much, I think wanting to be clear that the person has the aptitude, wants to do it, has something to offer. So I think there's some basic listening skills you can provide in terms of active listening, in terms of tangible to see whether that they have it. I think you also ask the mentors in terms of what they're looking for and where they feel they may have some deficits or some areas just needing kind of brushing off or brushing up on. You want to lay out, the one thing I will say, you want to always lay out, if you're doing a program, what the intent is of that program. Because the clarity, whether it's the program and that's a relationship of the organization and the people, whether it's a mentor and the mentee, clarity is absolutely clear communication. I cannot stress that enough. And you don't want anybody to have an assumption about what it's about. So I would say, first of all, be clear why you're starting a mentor program. What are the goals of that? What are you seeking to achieve with that? That should be a part of anything as you move forward.
Thank you very much for those, because as you all know, I think Lydia shared a little bit, we're in the process of designing a mentorship program. In fact, as this launch, we have a pilot that's coming up. So if you see through the slides that are moving, there's a QR code and there's probably a few running around where we have a questionnaire where we indeed ask you some questions that would reflect on what your thoughts are regarding the mentorship program. Hannah has a QR code also, but as the slide goes through, and we'll have time afterwards so you don't have to stop, where we ask you, what is it that you might be interested in? I'm gonna plug the French American Chamber of Commerce. I see you all here, so I know you're gonna join the organization and be with us. And that QR code is also on there, and avail yourself of this program.
And avail yourself of the program even without the mentor-mentee program, or even without the launch of the program, that I don't think people often value and understand the value of chambers. That chambers, I now belong to two, and I will be joining the French American Chamber as well.
Welcome.
But they really are extremely beneficial for career, and they're extremely beneficial from my perspective as a business owner right now, because it does allow you to develop relationships. And the very clear point that I make to anyone about being a chamber, you want relationships before you need them. You don't want to go after relationships when you're desperate, you need them. And so chambers allow you to have relationships with a whole host of people with some commonality because of that chamber, whether it's location, but that gives you an opportunity to have a pathway into a plethora of people with different backgrounds, different information to connect with, brothers, for you and your professional background. But I will tell you that I've developed relationships in chambers as ways to help my sister do something. So it's about relationships. And if you join a chamber and you don't be intentional and make use of the chamber and the relationships, and I say shame on you, because that's really what it's there for in terms of to grow both whether professionally or for your business.
Yes, I agree. One of the roles I play at my firm is that I'm the face of the organization of the firm, and I sit on a number of chambers. One of the benefits, particularly about the French American Chamber of Commerce, is that you connect with the French diaspora, but it's called the Francophonie. La Francophonie is the world. So you're not just talking to people from Paris. You're talking to people from Senegal, from Congo, from Asia, from the world, and Francophiles, and the Caribbean, Martinique, Guadeloupe, the whole world. And we're very blessed to be in Washington, D.C., where the world is. And so thank you for that plug. Please.
One thing I would add, the other thing that a chamber allows you to use some of your gifts and your talents that you may not be able to use where you work, but by being in a chamber, you can chair a committee. You can actually use them, and you can actually perfect some of the things that you've been trying to develop by participating in chamber and on a committee. And so that's a great opportunity in my mind that's outside of my normal workplace, that I actually can contribute some of my talent to that in the organization.
I want to thank you for helping us recruit more volunteers to the Women in Leadership Committee, that we need more volunteers so that we continue to smile. No, I love that because in fact, working on your gifts in an environment like this not only exposes you to other people, it's the inverse, right? Other opportunities that you may or may not have had. So that is great. I want to talk a little bit about transitions in mentorship, or maybe before I do the transitions, let me check in with everybody in the group. Is there a question? We will have a question and answer. Exactly, that's all right. The mic is coming to you. Please ask your question and make it succinct so we can get an answer and develop it.
So I actually have two questions. First question is the easy one. Should mentorship be something that you pay for? Because I've had a situation where someone said, how much do I think that this would cost? And I gave my price. And then the second question I have is, because I actually do coach for the job that I do, and you mentioned coaching versus mentorship. So I want to know, what is the difference, or what do you think the difference is? Because I think there could be a fine line in terms of it's coaching involves building a relationship and trust, same as mentor and mentee. But what is the difference? Like, what can signify the difference between the two?
So
Thank you.
I will tell you, I really can't answer your question about the payment side, but I'll start charging. Okay, but I think it really is up to you in terms of if that's one of your gifts and people are willing to pay for it. I've happened, all of my mentoring I've done voluntarily in terms of all the roles I've had.
No, the person that I was seeking mentorship from,
She was charging?
he
was charging.
Yes, so.
Yeah, it would be up to you whether you wanted to pay.
Diane, may I interrupt a
Certainly,
second?
please.
So, madam, give us a little bit of context on that relationship, so we can place it better.
So what happened is I reached out to another friend in reference to how to do a particular thing, right? Because I didn't have experience in it. So I asked, does he happen to know someone who knows how to create a case study? And he said, I don't, but I know somebody who probably could. So when he put me in touch with that person took it as I needed additional help in something else.
Yeah.
So he started asking me other questions, and then I realized, okay, he's building his own business in a sense from that perspective. So I think that is why he eventually segued into, well, how much do you think this should cost? And then that's when.
So yeah, I'm glad you asked for the clarity, because that is a consultancy. I mean,
Yes. And
but
that's different.
the point is, I said earlier about being clear in terms of communication. When you're talking about, for me, my experience, when you're talking about asking for a mentor, it really is not always a very specific skill. I want to go learn that. I'm asking that I want both a relationship with you, because I want to learn more how you're doing this. Not necessarily the skill, how are you engaging with your career? What were your challenges in your career? These are my challenges in my career. It may be a particular skill set that I may then refer you to somebody. I'm not going to try to give you that in my mentor relationship. I'm going to guide you in terms of, that's a part of, I believe, my responsibility. If you and I agree and negotiate that I will be your mentor and mentee, and talk about we would talk up front. What are you looking for out of this relationship? We would have much more clarity in the beginning about what are you looking for out of this relationship. And I'll tell you, when I coach, you may do the same thing at work, but when I coach, I literally tell them, because a foundation pays me to coach the group.
Right.
I tell them, you need to define for me what your goals are. I need to know what your goals are, the timeline for those goals, and how you see yourself investing in those goals. And I'm gonna coach you along that pathway, but you have to define that in terms of coach. I'm not asking that same kind of hard core question in a mentor-mentee relationship in the beginning, at least. I still gotta develop the relationship with someone I'm coaching, but it is a very different didactic for me.
Thank you. I think before we get to you had a second question? Did she answer both? Perfect, thank you.
Both. Thank you.
A lot of times, and we have another question that's coming up, a lot of times that you have to pay for things. That's not what you're saying, but I'm just saying for all of us.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, even with ourselves, we don't want to charge, or we're shy because of a myriad of issues. You know, I have no problem pricing things out. I can help you.
You don't.
No, I don't.
I mean, I don't, but I just wanted to know because, like, as you
You're
said,
right.
there's some people that are like, this is just something I want to do, you
Yeah,
know, so
yeah.
they don't have a problem in
Yeah.
doing it. However, sometimes I know that sometimes I believe as a former business owner, time is money.
Yeah.
So my time
Yeah.
is more valuable
Yeah.
because I can't get that back.
Yeah, yeah. And not only that, I was actually going one up because I know you understood it. I was just going one up to say for all of us, because sometimes we don't want,
I got you.
but that relationship, you were asking for a consultancy.
Mm.
So that's what I want you to hear really clear. You were asking for a consultancy. It's not necessarily what that you wanted as such, but that's how it comes out, which is fine. And had you known that, you probably would have paid,
Right.
but you were thinking something else. Madam, your question?
Merci. Thank you so much for the discussion. I wish to know, like, in a mentorship, what the mentor is looking for in a mentee and what the mentee can actually bring. Because, like, I feel a lot of times if I get a mentor, I think it's just like bothering, annoying someone with like all my weird questions.
Yeah. I'm gonna start a little bit, but obviously I'll give it to the expert, but I'm just gonna pull from what she said, setting the expectations at the onset. I think in all of our relationships, whatever they are, one has to be clear. Even as a young person, we're all at different stages of our lives, being clear onto what it is that we want. But Diane, please.
No, yeah, I think I said it earlier though. My personal belief is I do not think someone should be a mentor unless it's something they want to do. It doesn't make any sense to me to be a mentor and then to be bothered by somebody in terms of time. And again, you're going to negotiate what kind of time you're going to have together, but I do think you have to have the aptitude in terms of wanting to be a mentor, wanting to be engaged with people, having skill set to be engaged with people, ability to be an active, critical listener, ability to build trust. My husband, God rest his soul, who's deceased, he could never be anybody's mentor, okay? He didn't particularly like people. But I do think it has to be something that fits. I can't be a scientist, I don't have the aptitude, but I do have an aptitude around people. And so it's not a fit for everyone.
We have a question in the back, please. Madam? Thank you. We'll take one more question after Madam Kaylee.
Hi. I just had a quick question on being a mentor, actually, because I'm fairly early in my career, and I've found younger professionals seeking me out to kind of hear about my experience so far in my career. So at times I don't feel like I have the resources to share because I'm early in my career, and so I'm not really sure what they may be looking. Again, with the expectation question, I understand that goal setting, but kind of just talking a little bit about the personal and professional kind of expectations and sharing your path, like what they're getting out of that relationship, because again, I just feel like I'm not far enough in my career to have that much experience and or resources. I'm not going to be able to get them a job, for example. So that's just kind of what I would like to chat about a little bit.
Do you have more experience than they do?
By like a year, maybe.
I think
There's something about you that is bringing them to you.
Yeah, I think people are asking, I'm clear when people ask me that, wherever in my career I've been, people are asking, like we all want to know what's about to happen tomorrow. We all ask that. We're not going to know. But you want to know, what was that like? I haven't gone down that pathway. What were your trip? How did you trip up? Did you trip up? when did you feel sure about yourself? When didn't you? So the questions they will ask are really indicative of where they are at that moment. And they're just asking, and you probably are far enough removed, but not too far removed from the journey they're on. And so I would urge you, if you're willing, to provide that, because they're simply asking for what was your journey like. And their journey will be different. And they know that, and you want to make sure that's clear, because your journey won't be their journey. But I do want to know, if I'm about to take this journey, can you tell me where the potholes are? Can you tell me where the water fountain? I mean, I just want to know, were you scared? You know, who did you go to when you had a question? Or did you know this person before you started talking to them? How did you begin to speak up? They're just asking those kind of questions. All the things that you have been through. There's stuff you haven't been through left, and you may have asked them to join you on that next journey.
I want to bring a point to remind us of something that Diane shared earlier, is that we don't always see ourselves. And I invite you to reflect upon the people that are coming to you. Not in a spooky wooky kind of way, but the fact is that, yes, you are closer to them in age, in accessibility, but there's something about you. There is success about you. There's something that they aspire to that's with you. And so you don't have to give any more than you have. And that's probably good enough. Yeah. Ms. Christabel.
I love that statement. You don't have to give any more than you have. And that's true for any. You don't have to give any more than you have. Don't make it up.
I feel like Miss Christabel wants to share something with us. She has traveled the world and has served in so many countries for the nation of Barbados. Please, madam, you have some reflections for us, I'm sure. And I should say, she serves under one of the most talented modern women leaders that we have, Madam Mia Motley.
Yes, she does.
And I am going to boast, and I never boast. It might seem like I never do. I had the greatest pleasure of my life of meeting with her past May. I had a very nice audience with her. I want to pinpoint Barbados. This is the second event they have supported us in. But Madame Christabel is also a seasoned professional. She served her country around the world. Madam, any reflections?
Thank you, Bahia, and thanks for having me. I come from a small country, 166 square miles. I don't know if you could even imagine, if you were flying over Barbados and you just happen to look away to your left or to your right and not look down, you would probably miss it. But all of you would have heard the name Mia Motley. She has made sure she's put Barbados on the map. But we also have other female leaders. We have a female president. The first president of Barbados is a woman. Our deputy prime minister is a woman. So having strong females is something that we're accustomed to. But as far as mentorship is concerned, I've done that, and people have also gravitated towards me to, sometimes I try to be a wallflower, it doesn't work.
Surprise.
It doesn't work. But for me, I have when I've done it even informally, I've done it with the University of the West Indies formally, and I'm a foreign service officer. So I've always purposely, and to use your word intentionally, chosen, I mean, usually females, come to think of it. Probably have had like one or two guys, but usually females. I have intentionally chosen young females who come from a background that is not, upper middle class, have not been exposed to so many things, because I know that the world that I sit in is one that can be very intimidating. You walk into rooms and persons don't look like me. They don't look like me, they don't sound like me. So they have to prepare them for that. You walk into a room and your voice is equal to anyone that sits around that table. And I've come across, a lot of instances of young females having, and they've told me, imposter syndrome. And I'm like, what? So that is something that, and it's something that I don't even know. I want you to probably give me some insights on how to really crush that imposter syndrome. Because I try telling them, look, trust me when I tell you, most of the people in this room have fears too. They are equally fearful of something, but they give you a presence, and when they speak, they make you believe they know everything. But to get to that point calls for preparation.
Yes.
You
Yes.
never walk into a room, you never have a meeting unless you've done your due diligence.
That's right.
And I would like some insights from you on the imposter syndrome. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for sharing. I will tell you that. I will tell you that everything that you shared though about Barbados in terms of the leadership and then women's leadership, that I know all about it. I happen to know Bahia, and so so absolutely. And I've been a fan and a follower, and I plan on making it to Barbados before the end of this year. Okay, but yeah, the imposter syndrome I think is very real, and I'm more familiar with it, more so among Black women than I am. And that's not to say that white women or another culture doesn't have it, but I'm more familiar with it in the sense of many women who shared it with me will talk about not feeling like they belong, not feeling like they belong in that room. And what I will share with them in terms of time is I have them look at rooms they do feel like they belong and use that to talk about how they belong in another room, but use that in terms of similarities. But it's also the point Bahia just raised with the young lady in the back about looking at themselves. So I literally will say, let's talk about what your strengths are. Let's talk about that. And I remember one young lady who really had a hard time with that. Literally, I went to an event with her in terms of, and gave her some pointers about moving through the room in terms of that. I didn't go with her hand into the room, I was another part. But then we use that to talk about later in terms of, and how does she have an introduction with someone? And I say to persons networking and you feel like I always tell people to begin your introductions and find out about the other person. Become an active listener. And the introduction can be even around children are the greatest introduction in any relationship, whether you're a parent, an auntie, uncle, whatever, in terms of that. But then having them come back and tell me what they learned about that person. Because that becomes a way for them to look at themselves in terms of relationship and begin to help guide them through that process. But that for me is where I would tell you is much more the transformational work. Because you have to acknowledge I acknowledge that's where they are, and then I help to move them past that point by they'll look at themselves. And the point you made to them about other people in the room have something, where I literally ask them to go find that out for themselves in terms of chit chat. Because if they find that out for themselves with the chit chat, they'll go, oh, you were right. Most of the people in a room I go in like that, I know like most of the people in the room, but I'll find out about, and I'll say, did you find out this about them? And they'll learn that, okay, everybody's human and everybody's got frailty. But that's a tough one. That's really internalized, and you have to really begin to have them uninternalize that.
Thank you.
Thank you both for that, but I want to stay with the imposter syndrome because I'm like Christabel, this is something I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that does not resonate with me at all.
Sure.
Yeah.
We've talked about this.
No, but this is why I'm bringing it here. Anna, you want to say something quick, because I'm gonna.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, quick.
Wait, come on.
I think the imposter syndrome is also rooted in intimidation
And insecurity.
Sure.
Because that's something else that
Sure. But I want to stop it. Here's why. I will not stop it. I want to make my point here, right? Because there's other perspectives and other cultures see things differently.
Right.
And one of the importance of being part of a chamber where you mix with different types of people, I don't know what imposter syndrome is. It is something that I had to, I identify in a very weird way. Somebody asked me where I was from, right? And like many of you, right? We are Italian. We were brought up by ethnicity in a traditional home, brought up in Boston, married a French. I lived in Paris. My parents worked at the UN. I have a different life. But I also lived in New York. I've lived all over the world. I don't know what imposter syndrome is. It is not cocky, it's not arrogant. It represents the fact that we are not a monolithic group, right? And that we can grow and learn from that. I do almost everything afraid because I don't know an alternative. And I shared that with my 14-year-old son. I'm like, of course mommy is afraid. but I have to do it. So I share that point, and we are different, and the benefits and strengths of this, and I think we can grow and, I don't know, feed off of each other.
But it's also
Not to
like-
deny, excuse me, let me just say this point. I don't ever want to deny, I don't ever want to deny another person's experience, but I do not want my experience to be lost or generalizations to be made to a whole group when there are different people within that group.
Yeah, no, I think the point about the imposter syndrome, though, I made the point that of the group I find it more so with. But it is very much about, the difference is very much about lack of exposure, lack of experience. Because if I have the experience, if I have the exposure, you begin to see, so that's the point about taking them out to get more exposure in terms of, because it is internal, it is a sense of self-worth, it is all of those things you name. And some of that, I'm not gonna go through all that in this conversation, so, because by training I'm an MSW, okay, so y'all don't want me to start. But, you know, in terms of trauma, all those things are part of getting to that point. But I am a firm believer that people can grow. I'm a firm believer that you can grow past that in terms of by continuing to experience and continue kind of internalize in terms of looking at those issues. But everybody doesn't have it.
No.
And the truth of the matter is, I'm clear, Bahia, that in somebody else's culture, it may be something else.
Yes.
And I need to know that.
Yes.
I have to be mindful that we talked about this, somebody else's culture may have been a wholly different experience that I've not had. And I think that's the most important part of the conversation, is we all have different experiences that bring us to a point that I said from the beginning, understanding the culture is an important part of being a mentor.
Thank you very much. So I've done a little bit of a time check, and I want to switch to talking about transitions, okay? So Lydia shared with us, of course, we all know, but reminder that we're in a time and period of transitions. Within this period of transitions, as in life, one can look at it a different way. One can challenge oneself to look at it another way, or one can stay in the same place. A mentor or mentee relationship can be one of those vehicles that help you look at transitions differently. What are some of the opportunities and challenges that are brought about during transitions?
I think it can actually be an opportunity and a challenge all at the same time. Because in transition, I think about some of the transitions going on now for federal employees, as an example, in terms of those that have suddenly find themselves unemployed. That I can only imagine, because it has not happened to me, what that must feel like. First of all, the worry for those that may not have any other backup, or even what that feels like in terms of what it can say to you, even though you know it's not you, what it can say to you about that kind of sudden trauma, separation. That's not how you separate anybody from anything. And so I think a mentor can play a role. I don't know if I try to be a new mentor or find somebody new at that point, but I think it can play a role in terms of helping you be a mirror for yourself to see that you do have assets, that, you know, there are lots of positive things, helping you take stock of all of your positive things. I think it can be an asset of connecting to networks, because more than anything else, I want to know what resources are out there. I want to know who do you know that knows this or knows that. Maybe I'm not ready for it. Maybe I want to redo. Maybe it's another point kind of career I want to try now. So I think that's what a mentor can do in terms of helping during that transition, if that's the kind of transition you're having. But you can have other transitions in terms of even career on the other end of coming out in terms of and trying to go somewhere different in terms of your career. That's a transition as well.
Diane, I want to stay at the transition to where we are, because this room is filled with that, or acquaintances with that. Specifically, if you could go a little bit deeper on transitions for people at different parts of their career who are abruptly stopped, but have started something else or taking a time of pause. There's a lot of talk in Instagram, I'm an Instagram addict, about pausing and resting. And this is something I find very hard to do. But is there a place for pausing and resting in a period of transitions? I mean, probably yes, but how does one do that if you're so used to being on the go all the time? And how does that fit into this transition period?
Well, my first comment in my head would be, financially, can you pause? Okay, that's the first thing in my head, in terms of, because both as a business owner and just as one time as a wife, a mother and all that, is everything covered in terms of what I'm responsible for? And maybe I've gotten a severance, and in terms of that, whatever happens with that, do I have a chance to pause? I think initially for somebody, if you take stock and financially you feel like you can pause, at least for 2 months it probably is a good time to take stock of where you want to go, of what the next steps are, once you make sure the absolute necessities are taken care of. I don't think anybody can't pause if you're not taking care of the necessities of your life, because then that's just stress.
I think also in terms of maybe a frame, but I won't go there too much. I want to open the question up, open up the room to questions around transitions. And our Mike, if we can have any hands, if you have questions regarding transitions. I just want to make another plug for Barbados. I'm good. If you want to take a pause, I would highly recommend you visit Barbados. I am not being paid by them, but it is a tranquil and sweet island. That is. You had a question?
I do have a
Yeah,
question.
Mike,
I have
please.
a loud voice. I think
No,
I'll
no,
be
no.
okay. No, I must have. According to Madame Bahia. So I don't know if I missed this, but did we talk about whether a mentorship relationship has to be formal? Because over the years, I've definitely benefited greatly from having different mentors along the way, but it kind of crept up on me. It sort of was one of those things that's happened, and then I realized, oh, this is a relationship I, want to nurture, and this person is acting as a mentor to me, and I can really benefit. I have been benefiting from it, and I must continue. And some of those continue to this day. I mean, one of my longest mentorship relationships has gone on for 2 decades. And I didn't realize it at the outset, but somewhere along the line I realized. And so now, that was in the corporate world, a certain setting, and we're no longer in that setting, but I kind of mark it on my calendar to reach out to that person and say, hey, let's go for lunch. I'll take you to lunch. Let's have a chat. And we usually have things to discuss, and I benefit from it. So
I think we did touch on it, but
Right.
Diane might want to reflect a little bit more on a relationship that sort of develops organically. Maybe you can touch a little bit more on that.
Yeah, no, I think it doesn't have to be formal. I have a number of very informal relationships, but when I listened to it, I thought of a conversation I recently had with someone. So do you see that as still your mentor, or is that someone that's blossomed into a friend?
There's definitely a mentorship component. The person's a lot older than me, and so we wouldn't necessarily just hang out. I mean, we might, but their life has gone on. But I do find myself as I'm, at some point down the line, I was thinking about transitioning from working for someone to starting my own firm, and that was the first person I thought of. I've got to reach out to them. I've got to go out to lunch and talk to them about
So you use her that
So
way.
I do use
That
her.
is the way you use her, and that's the way she responds back to you. It's fine.
Right.
I think if it works for the two of you all, it's fine. It does not have to be formal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. Good evening, and thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom. My name is Chidi Blyden, and I'm not from Barbados. But I have been it multiple times.
Chidi, do you mind? I'm
and-
going to interrupt you. Please, can you tell people who you are? And it's significant. Yes, I'm sorry.
I will give a brief.
Yes.
Because it gets to my question. But I'm the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, the Pentagon for Africa, and then how Bahia and I know each other is I am married to her childhood friend, but I formally just left the Biden administration working at the White House, and I was at the Millennium Challenge Corporation as Deputy CEO. So this period of transition, I anticipated and knew was coming.
Yes.
Obviously my party did not win. But I used the opportunity, as you've already mentioned, to start thinking ahead about how I wanted to take the next chapter in my life. And I'm a very senior executive person at this point, and so the choices that I'm able to make at this point are very different. And so I started my own firm. It's called Culturally Bound. And so as you were mentioning,
Congratulations.
thank you. As you were mentioning, sort of talking about the cultural context of imposter syndrome and many of the other things, that is a lot of what my firm does, but it really focuses on leveraging the African diaspora for the industries that I've worked in: development, defense, security, stability,
Awesome.
and many of those different industries. But I am transitioning from being a government and public servant and giving away things for free and constantly being a mentor and mentee and guest speaking and all of these things. And I've, and the flip of a hat, I'm now turned into an entrepreneur and a business person and someone who's having to do business development. And so I wanted to get a sense from you just how to think about shifting that mindset. What does it take to, because I'm reading books and I have mentors, I have all the things that we have mentioned here thus far, but it is difficult to say, I should be charging this in the defense industry, I'm charging this in the development industry, I cannot speak at all of these universities for free, my lectures are now worth, but then also wanting to build and cultivate this new relationship in the private sector, in the new world, and sort of balancing that at this level. So I would welcome your insights on that.
There are a couple things I would share with you, and congratulations again. I've been saying congratulations for that. And I also had to do a transition from having been a paid employee, head of an organization, into my own business. And the things that helped me in terms of that transition was finding women who had done it before me. That helped me a lot in terms of identifying women who had done that transition and they were further down the pathway than I was. It helped me. I'll give a plug for NASDAQ. Has a program online that I urge you to apply for. It was awesome. It was an online program, but there's several of them out there. The NASDAQ, the Wall Street, in terms of has a program that you can apply in terms of is for women. There are a number of them, and I'm very glad that I did because it gave me a huge network. You develop milestones, and you've got to actually track your milestones, and they help you do that in terms of relationships, and you learn. I learned a lot from other women in the group because you're in a cohort. I learned a lot about charging, okay? I learned a lot about when to say, no, I won't charge. I learned a lot about AI, which is my sister and I are gonna marry AI. Okay, let me be clear. We're in love, okay, we're in love. And so I think that's what you wanna do, is the same thing in terms of you can find mentors. I think chambers are a great place for that as well, as a new business owner. Somebody that's already started that pathway. I would definitely urge you to do that.
Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful. I am coming from a largely male industry,
Yeah.
both
Yeah.
in corporate and in the
Yes.
Pentagon, and so those mentorships that I've had thus far have been men, and they've been amazing allies.
Yeah.
And there is just something very different about
Yeah.
transitioning into that space. And so yes, I am here to build relationships with the chamber and other women who are in that space.
And look for businesses. Look when you look out there. Look for some of the. I'll find them in some of the women-owned businesses that may actually be in your sector, may actually be there. And I know a couple of them.
Okay.
And actually, and I will tell you something. I tell people all the time: do cold calls. I don't know any single person that I've ever done a cold call to that I said, I've just started and I've heard you're great. Can you give me 15 minutes?
Okay.
I end up getting more, but I would say do cold calls.
Can I also recommend the League of Greater Washington?
Oh, yes.
Is another group.
Yes.
Where you will meet, and you have a cohort and you guys kind of work together and then you are open to the other networks too. And it doesn't have to be Washington's league. It could also be, there's one in Montgomery County, there's one in Charles County. They're all over, but it's just finding which one you want to connect with.
Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Before anybody else, before anyone joins any other chamber, I can see you. I'm just saying for the whole group. You better not join another chamber before you join me and Lydia at the French American Chamber of Commerce. Next question. Thank you.
I think our question mic is dead, so people are gonna have to print that.
Pardon? Oh,
I
okay.
think is that one working? Right.
It works. Yeah.
It was shut off. Oh, sorry.
So going back a little bit to informal mentors, I'm currently working at a multilateral organization called Inter-American Development Bank,
Of course.
and we're encouraged.
Cafecitos, or these are just informal meetups. It went on.
Yeah, just stand up, you might project better. Thank you.
Sorry. So we're encouraged to take the so-called cafecitos, which is a one-on-one 30-minute coffee with someone that you're interested in other like areas. So these are not formal mentors, but how would you go about asking these people after the 30 minutes that you would like for them to mentor you? Because some of them have been working as public servants in the private sector, but they're kind of like, okay, what would you need from me? But there's nothing really like a set formal mentorship that you would require. But in this time of transition, if you're trying to kind of escalate a career or do a career shift, what would you recommend on facing them after the 30 minutes to keep nurturing that relationship?
Do you have more than the 30 minutes? Do you have an opportunity beyond the 30 minutes to reach out to them?
Yeah, it's up to us, but sometimes it's kind of like, oh, after the 30 minutes, I guess that was it. But it's kind of like your own initiative to keep nurturing the relationship. So what would be your advice or tips that you could recommend to keep nurturing relationships in the long term?
So I have to tell you what I've done. It was a 30-minute one, but I go up to people and say, will you be my mentor? I mean, I do. I have in my career. And so I was asking about if you have anything beyond the 30 minutes so that it would give you an opportunity to explore a little bit further who they are. You can do a little bit of Google research or you can chit chat with them. So maybe you're not ready to just ask them directly. Maybe you can ask them, can we have a cup of coffee? If there's somebody in for that 30 minutes that you found interesting that you may want for a potential mentor, then you could take the next step and say, I'd like to have a cup of coffee with you. Can we exchange cards to do a cup of coffee? Then it will give you an opportunity to do more than 30 minutes to explore it. And certainly you don't have to do what I do. I walk up to people and say, will you be my mentor? And I did somebody once and they said they won't be my mentor. I said, I don't care, you are. But it's somebody who is, we're dear friends now. But I did do that to him.
Yeah.
It was the head of a foundation.
Let me push you back a little bit, Diane, okay? Diane, as you can see, and by culture, in my culture, age and seasoning is lots of respect and adoration, okay? It is, this is my culture. She is a seasoned, positively aged, strong, professional, and dynamic woman. Not all of us can go up to people.
I was 35 when I did that.
Yes, that's you. That's you. And so this is one of the things I've pushed Diane about, which is the cafecitos is a coffee break, right? But there's still hesitation. So can somebody who is not as...
Well, what I said at Architecture, I hope was further to say, don't let it stop there. All I was saying was you don't have to ask them to be your mentor. Find an opportunity to continue the conversation so that after those 30 minutes, can you ask for another time? Because the conversation was so great. You really didn't finish having the conversation with them. And you give it a compliment in terms of, like I would say to you in terms of, I don't know anybody in this room that this doesn't work for. Compliment someone, okay? All of us want to feel positive. All of us like feeling good and somebody sharing that. And say, I was really interested in what you were sharing. Maybe we could have an opportunity to talk further at another time. Are you interested in that? Can we exchange numbers? And I just simply want to keep going back to what I said from the beginning over and over again. It's about relationships. So if you think about a relationship you've had with somebody significant in your life, when it first started, how did you begin? How did you begin? Just go back to that. How did you begin? In terms of just really ease into it. Certainly, I'm not asking everybody to do this crazy stuff I've done in my career, but I am saying that if you're interested in talking to somebody, just simply say, can we have an opportunity to continue to talk?
Thank you. We have 2 more questions in the front.
Along the same lines, what advice do you give for those of us in the room, or folks in the room who find themselves unemployed, or who work 100% virtually, and also maybe an introvert? So what advice do you give those folks who don't have an office to go to, right? They're just at home. And how do they make that leap to find a mentor to help them with that transition?
Well, I'm gonna go back to Bahia's point and tell them to join the chamber.
Okay.
But, because I do, I mean, it's really important, even you're home, and my business is home, and I'm a people person, to make sure that a part of it, but I'm not an introvert, so that's clear. But,
There are those.
no, I'm
Right.
gonna answer, I'm just being facetious about me in that point. I would say there are places you can go, being an introvert, that you can go to be around people. So nothing has to be done overnight. First of all, let's be clear, nothing has to be done overnight. And being an introvert, you may decide to go to see stuff online, you're following whatever social media, and you don't have to talk. You can be there to be around people, to feel it out. Is this someplace I feel comfortable? I haven't talked yet. I just want to see how I'm going to feel at this place. Maybe I'm only going to go to the Starbucks in terms of 4 blocks down, because I know there are lots of folks that stay there. I think it's still happening. I don't know. I don't go to Starbucks anymore. But I think you want to do it in a way that's comfortable. I would say over and over again, you don't do anything that's uncomfortable for you. You don't do anything that's uncomfortable. You want to be ready to go push past your discomfort if you've got support to do it. I think it's important to have support. I don't think you toss yourself out there on the flames by yourself. I think if you're an introvert in particular, I think you want to make sure that you find some place that you are comfortable with being out there among people, even if you're working from home. Chamber events are a great place to go. The one thing now with social media for all of us, there's no excuse not finding something somewhere you can go to be around other people who maybe like you. Take your association for your career, whatever that is. Somebody's doing something in that lane. You want to do the research and find some place.
Thank you. Thank you. No, please.
So
There's a lady who
my
hasn't spoken yet. Go right ahead, please.
My question actually piggyback off of that, because you talked about, I hope everybody can hear me, being online as well as cold calling, and young lady here, and there's questions. How do you cold call online? Because there's a difference when you have slide in someone's DMs versus using LinkedIn to now formally go and engage with someone. What is a way that people can start the conversation with either getting a mentor or, as Lydia said, seeking employment, because it is a different way to engage online. And you get some people who take the informality and they think they can talk about anything, not realizing you're still talking to a person. So how can somebody do that, whether it be cold calling or through a connection with a place? I prefer LinkedIn, but in any social media space.
So I'm a LinkedIn person too, and I've had people approach me on LinkedIn to say, would you be my mentor? To say, I'd love to meet you. In terms of, they said, I looked at your profile. I looked at, and I see that you did X, or I see that you used to work for Y. And so using the same information online about somebody, use that as a connection. Any relationship, use it as a connection, that information as a connection in terms of about that may be on that LinkedIn site. If it's a particular profession, or let's say they had a job in some industry that you're interested in. Oh, I saw online that you're doing such and such. I've really been trying to understand how to better do that. It says that you did a great, positive compliment. Nobody's gonna, I tell you, I cannot believe anybody, I've never had anybody, if you send a compliment and to somebody and you say, I really was impressed by what you did or what I saw, I don't see anybody telling you, oh, were you? Oh, let's talk. People have done it and people do it, but I think you must be professional, you must be respectful. All those things, you wouldn't do that. Some things that happen on social media, we wouldn't do that to somebody in person. So you don't do that to somebody online either. If you're in a professional world, you're not gonna do that.
May I ask just one question, please? Well, it's a brilliant observation. I think we need also too, and I think most of us here, I'm certainly not any Gen Z or millennial or anything. I think we need to engage those. I only read something today, and I can tell you for a fact, my son is 18 years old, and he's allowed me to know I only have WhatsApp to talk to you. I don't use WhatsApp for my friends. So my question is, we need to come up with a way, some kind of methodology to reach that generation that is not interested in any of the traditional formal ways of engaging. I read something that said, and I was shocked, and I could see, you know what, this may be true. My son doesn't really call me, he's in Japan. And that's another thing too. People go like, whoa, you allowed him to go to Japan for a year? I was like, well, that was his choice. He's gonna learn that you take a decision, you're gonna grow from that. However, my point is, he preferred to send a text or do whatever. Calling is like, when he calls for sure, I know it's like, he wants money. He's running low on funds. How do we engage that? I read something today that said, only today, and I was probably on IG just flipping through things, and you get a lot of information from Instagram. And I read something is that there are actually courses now to engage that generation that are actually afraid to pick up a telephone and speak to someone. They're petrified. Let me call someone. They don't know how to do it.
Exactly.
It's not taught anymore.
That's why I asked my
And we
question,
talk about
because my son, who's a little older than that, is an introvert. And when he was looking for a job, he wouldn't do the cold calling, he wouldn't do the networking, and preferred to extend his unemployment instead of just picking up the phone or going to the French Chamber.
Yes, please, sir.
This is a generational problem. It's an American problem. We live in a country where people are losing the ability to communicate. And they think they don't need to. They just go to their cell phone and punch some numbers or letters, and that's supposed to do something because they're open to the world. Which is baloney. They're not open to anything.
And half the room agrees with that.
Yes.
We have. The only way you get somewhere, and that's why you have diplomacy. You need to talk with real people in a real room, and you can get something done. All this AI crap is just so much baloney. I mean, your computer simulation is one thing, but the idea that it's a substitute for human interaction is an illusion.
So I agree with you. I think you're right, but let me say that he is absolutely correct. But I have a number of Gen Zs that I actually work with, and my belief is you start with AR. I'm a texter. I don't, I'm certainly not a Gen Z. A little close, but okay. But so I text. I think sometimes, and one of them now, and I use them to help inform me. So the thing is, I develop a relationship. Tell me, why are you doing that way? Come on, what does that mean? Oh my God, I'm literally going to engage them where they are. What we have to do with anybody. And so that's where Gen Zs are. That's where I start. I ask anybody, how do you communicate? Because not everybody texts, not everybody uses a phone. I want to know, how do you communicate? And so those clients I have or people that are Gen Zs, I text them. And we set up text times in terms of that. But another Gen Z, I'm saying, what is that word? Tell me. Oh, come on, tell me. Can you teach me? So I become their student for them to grow to trust me, to know that I'm not going to give them that lecture. I'm not going to tell them they should go do this, do that. Tell me your world. Bring me into your world, and then I'll bring you into my world. But I let them bring me into their world first.
Thank you. So my timekeeper has given me the signal, but I have two people who have not spoken, and I do want to hear from them. So what I'm gonna do is ask you to, your questions will go back to back, and then Diane, you can respond in group if you wish. Please, Anna.
Well, I haven't properly introduced myself, but I'm a student and a sophomore student. So I feel particularly concerned by your really enriching insights on communication. And I'm right now an intern at the FACC. And to be honest, so I'm French, so I knew no one in the US, no one in DC. I had no network at all. And finding an internship was so hard. I contacted lot of people on LinkedIn, by email, and honestly, I've tried what you said about complimenting people on things they had done, like achievements and all that. And to be honest, like I don't have a lot of experience because I'm still 19, but I still did like internship in the past, like 4 or 5 of them. And honestly, I did not like get a lot of responses on LinkedIn. Like people would just, either they would say they're not interested, or they would like, most of them would just not reply. And do you think then that if I had called them, I would have gotten like more responses? Because honestly, I did not do that because I felt like they wouldn't have time to answer. Because they didn't even have time to answer online. So it was like, if I was calling them, it would have not worked.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, please, Madam Pause. Go ahead.
My question / comment also piggybacks off of what she said. I'm not Gen Z, but I will say the landscape in terms of job searching really has shifted, even from my initial graduation of undergrad to where I am now. A lot of the times we are discouraged heavily from calling in. And then on top of that, a lot of businesses are using LinkedIn, all these job search platforms to just aggregate a massive amount of resumes that they will never get to. So while I feel like there is a large consideration that needs to be given in terms of how we reach out, I would also push back and challenge that the understanding that a lot of these corporations know that they have an endless supply of applicants, especially now that jobs are so few. So in that, how do we balance, I think some of the more traditional methods that do work with the fact that we may burn ourselves out just from applying.
Thank you. So I'm gonna ask Diane to answer those 2 questions, and then we're gonna close this aspect and then do our reception and time to chat. I just wanna be honoring of our time.
So what you said is that both of you, absolute your reality. And I know that to be true from a number of corporations I work for, they're my clients, in terms of how they're dealing with job searches now in terms of massive amount. But I would, and I don't know that calling doesn't work for everybody. And certainly saying polite, wonderful thing doesn't work for everybody. But I will tell you without a shadow of a doubt that what will work is being in somebody's face. Okay. And so that means you gotta do a little bit more. You do have to do more homework in terms of finding the place to go where some of not necessarily, it's not gonna be the CEO that's gonna be at that place. Maybe you look for places, not to do with your career, but you look for places where HR professionals go in terms of network, because that's who's gonna make those decisions. So not necessarily in your line, but in your line with the HR professional, all kinds of professional organizations for HR persons. You ask for people who know people, and I will tell you that I don't know a single person that I can't get to, because I treat getting to people like a thesis. I mean, I do hardcore research in terms of who they know, what school they went to, who's alumni at that school. I mean, literally, it's down to using it like research in terms of connect. It's not just straight away. When you find, in this times, you do it like a research project. Find connectors. Your connectors will take you in the door. But you gotta do the research. You gotta do all the background. You gotta find out what college they went to, in terms of did they have any kind of sports in college? Did they have any kind of special awards they got in college? Who do you know that went to that college? Call it, how do you find alumni from that college? So you really do have to be a lot more detailed in your research to get to people now because of the way that the job market is working.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank you all for the conversation. There are a few things I want to repeat for us to keep in mind. The first thing is what we started on, is what is a mentor? Somebody that teaches, somebody that guides, instructs, disciplines, and coaches. The characteristics of mentors and the seriousness of the role, the preparedness that it requires of the mentee, the preparedness that it requires of the mentee, again, I'm saying it twice because it just went back to you, treating the project, if you will, as a research, giving yourself that time. I also heard a strong theme of understanding the generations, and Diane sharing with us to connect, and Madame Reese also sharing with us to connect intentionally with the different ages and age sets. Associations, building relationships. I think, Lydia, almost that we have to almost consider a workshop, a didactic, how does one do? I don't know, critique each other or what. It just seems like there's a part two that I wasn't thinking about, you know? So with that, I want us to really think through what it means to be a mentor, what it means to be a mentee, the responsibility that takes. And in this room, we have lots of resources. We have the next 30 minutes to socialize. There's champagne, there's wine. We don't do anything without wine. Nothing, so that's a benefit of joining, okay? I also want to salute the food, which is from Fresh Baguette. If you're in the DC region, it is beyond good. All my money during COVID that I was supposed to be saving was ordering baguette 7 o'clock in the morning outside my door. So shout out to them. With that, as I close, Diane, I'll ask you if you had any closing words or comments. There is a QR code that's going to end here. Please fill it out. That's that form that will help inform us about your ability, role, desire to be connected with us in the mentorship program. I'm coming to a few people to collect your money for the French Chamber. I won't, but somebody else will. I'm going to turn it over to Diane for any closing words, and then Lydia will close us out. Thank you.
So, 2 closing words. One, I want to say to you, also go back to your college, even if it's not here, call them, find out their career department in terms of that. Most of them have it. Ask them what opportunities are coming their way, and if they can link you to some college, university here in their career department. Use your own resources and relationships to get connected to that. I guess I want to end kind of with a charge to everyone in this room besides joining the French Chamber. I want to end with a charge, and that's 2 statements I want to make. One, I want to ask you not to leave here this evening in terms of the networking session, not to leave here, wherever you are, whoever you are, what age you are, without meeting somebody you didn't know when you walked in this room. Do not ever walk in a room and leave it and not meet someone new. Get the card, be intentional. Do not walk out of here this evening without meeting someone new in a very intentional way. Hello, my name is, and who are you? That. The second thing I want to end with in terms of whether it's mentor or mentee, any of that, particularly not discussing the politics or any of that, but just in the world we're in right now, the other thing I would ask you to do is to simply give each other grace. That's it.
Thank you, Diane.